deportation flights. David Spunt reports.
The order came down from the Supreme Court at 1 o'clock Saturday morning. Highly unusual for this court, but it shows you the importance of the issue. This is a temporary defeat for the Trump administration. The 7-2 emergency order blocks the administration's use of that Alien Enemies Act to deport suspected Venezuelan gang members from Texas to El Salvador, at least for now. The court ruled that while deportations may continue across the country, due process, meaning a hearing in front of a judge to contest the arrest, must take place. Now, the order aims to stop what happened in March when immigration officials put illegal immigrants on planes, suspected gang members, I may add, without any court hearings.
Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito, in his dissent, criticized the court for making the ruling, quote, literally in the middle of the night. This is law professor and Fox News legal consultant Jonathan Turley.
You get a sense of the frustration that a number of the members of the court are experiencing with this torrent of emergency appeals. And what Justice Alito is saying is, you know, we need to get back to regular order because these cases are coming to us without a record. We don't know what the position of lower courts are. It's basically an improvisational type of filing. And Alito is basically saying, I'm having enough of this.
Meanwhile, some Democrats are making it their latest cause to get an illegal alien gang member returned to the U.S. The media has stated repeatedly that Kilmar Abrego Garcia was, quote, mistakenly or wrongly deported. But White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says,
we did not make a mistake. We have always maintained that this was an individual who needed to be deported from our country. The president swore to the American public he was going to deport illegal criminals, and especially those who have been involved in violent gangs like MS-13 that have terrorized American communities. And so to the Democrat Party, who thinks that they are going to bring this foreign terrorist back to the United States of America to live a peaceful and happy life, that is never going to happen.
Police outside Dallas say a local elected official was stabbed along with her husband, who died from his injuries. And the suspect is their grandson.
Police in Louisville, Texas, northwest of Dallas, say Denton County Commissioner Bobby Mitchell and her husband Fred were found stabbed. Fred Mitchell died from the stab wounds, and Mitchell herself remains hospitalized. Police already have a suspect in custody who they say is the Mitchell's own 23-year-old grandson. They have yet to say why Mitchell Blake Reinecker would have harmed his grandparents. He's now charged with murder and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Eben Brown, Fox News.
The national security analyst is concerned that the left is fully energized right now. While she is concerned, there is apathy on the right.
Recently, nearly 7,500 packed an arena in Missoula, Montana, to attend a Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders Fighting Oligarchy rally. He was accompanied by New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. They criticized the influence of billionaires in U.S. politics and cuts to federal agencies and programs made by President Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Montana was just one of several red states being targeted by the well-funded and well-organized campaign. Brigitte Gabriel is founder and chairman of Act for America and the best-selling author of Rise.
The left right now is so activated, and the apathy on the right is heartbreaking. It's frightening. The grassroots on the left are organizing in such a massive way right now that we on the right need to understand that just because we elected President Trump does not mean we can all go to sleep right now and President Trump is going to fix everything.
And Gabriel says 2026 is right around the corner.
We're worried about the upcoming midterm election. The left is organizing while the right is now already asleep with apathy. If we don't wake up right now and keep the same passion, the same engagement, the same level of volunteerism with your local political group, whether it's the Tea Party, the Republican Party, the MAGA parties, if you volunteered during the election or before the election, continue volunteering now, because it's going to be a fight in 1 year.
I'm Chad Groening.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
Thoughts of the child you were carrying keep pouring over in your mind. A deep, unrelenting sadness overshadows your days, and you wonder if you will ever feel whole again. There is hope and healing from a reproductive loss. Call the International Helpline, 866-482-LIFE, and talk with someone who has been where you are. Your call is confidential, and we will help you find healing. 866-482-LIFE.
we inform.
Religious freedom is about people of faith being able to live out their faith, live out their convictions, no matter where they are.
We equip.
Sacred honor is the courage to speak truth, to live out your free speech.
We also rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome to The Core here on American Family Radio. I'm Walker Wildmon. Glad to have you with us on this edition of the program. Once again, you're listening to American Family Radio. I'm Walker Wildmon. The show name is At the Core, and this is a brand new edition of the program. Before we get into some of the news stories of the day, and then we'll have a guest with us in the second and the third segment, do want to turn our attention to the scripture. I pray and hope that you had a joyful Easter weekend and a good resurrection Sunday. There's two main holidays or holy days in the Christian faith that really put a bookend, if you will, on the faith and on the Word of God, and that is Christmas, which celebrates the birth of Jesus, the Son of God, and Easter, which celebrates the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, the Son of God. And without those two key historical events, there is no Christianity. There is no Christianity as we know it. And you have to believe in these fundamental precepts, fundamental truths, that Jesus did come. He was born of a virgin, lived a sinless life, and then he died and rose from the dead. These are just key truths of the Christian faith, and so that's what we celebrated, on Easter. And when you look into, and I don't mean to have the first segment all focused on apologetics and Easter, but when you look at the accounts of Jesus, the accounts from the various apostles, some of the disciples, other writers around the death, burial, and resurrection, it's just amazing to me that how many witnesses there were. And there's other parts of Scripture where there's just a handful of witnesses, like when you look at some of the miracles that Jesus performed. There's also accounts of Jesus performing miracles where there's hundreds of witnesses. But when you look at the accounts of Jesus's arrest, his crucifixion, his burial, his resurrection, his appearing after the resurrection, before his ascension, we're talking hundreds of witnesses here. And it's just amazing to me how many witnesses there were. And the fact that nobody's been able to find the body of Jesus for 2,000 years. We're 2,000 years after, and no one's found the body of Jesus. Think about how many false religions would love to find the body of Jesus. Think about it. Think about how many people throughout history would love to have found the body of Jesus, the Son of God. But it hasn't happened, and it's not going to happen because Jesus rose from the dead, and that's how we have eternal life. All right, turning our attention to the scripture, we are in the book of Proverbs, Proverbs chapter 7. This proverb is talking about a young man who finds a woman and commits adultery. And he's lured in, if you will, to this act of adultery. This is a married woman in this proverb, chapter 7. But at the end, and it's talking about wisdom. But what I noticed, just to summarize here, this passage here, it's about 27 verses, chapter 7 of Proverbs, is that the young man, he goes down the wrong path. And I mean that quite literally. He goes towards the path of this promiscuous woman, and he gets tangled up. And then at the end, you see in verses 26 and 27 that it says, "For many are the victims that she has cast down," talking about this adulterous woman, "and numerous are all her slain. Her house is the way to Sheol, which is the way to hell, descending to the chambers of death, verse 27. And so two truths that I want to point out here that we see in this proverb. The first truth is that we ought to be alert and not go down the path of temptation, which can lead to the path of sin. Doesn't have to, but when you take this risky path that this young man took, it led to his demise. And so that's the first truth, is we ought to be alert, and we shouldn't go down these paths of known temptation, of being put in known vulnerable situations. Secondly, is that in this case, this sin, it led to what it calls chambers of death. And we're talking eternal here. We're not just talking temporal or bodily. We're talking eternal. And so there's a lot to be learned from here in Proverbs chapter 7. And those are just two simple truths that we can draw away from it. Turning our attention to some of the news stories I want to get to, and before I do, I want to mention some events that we have coming up. June 12th through the 14th, you've heard this if you've been listening to AFR for some time now. Over the last month or two, you've heard us talk about this. We had on Ed Vitagliano with us last week to talk about it. He's going to be one of our main session speakers. And the Activate Summit is coming up in June 12th through the 14th. If you would like to check out the ticket pricing and the itinerary, if you will, or the speaker lineup and some of the scheduling, you can do so over at activate.afa.net, activate.afa.net. Go ahead and check that out. All right, a couple clips I have for this segment, at least we'll get to one or two, hopefully. This legislation in Colorado is very, very dangerous. It's still pending, hasn't been signed by the governor yet. Hopefully it won't be, but it's bad news. And it gets into this misgendering, if you will. This misgendering, which is it's a play on and it is rooted in the transgender ideology that says that you have to call these individuals, these young boys, young girls, or men or women by their preferred pronoun, right? Their preferred name once they identify as transgender. And so it's granting legitimacy to a falsehood. What's the falsehood? The falsehood is that you can change your sex, you can change your gender, which is just blatantly untrue. You just can't do it. And this gets into science as well, irrefutable science, that there's no such thing, and there never has been in the medical world, of changing your sex. It's purely a figment of your imagination. You can't change your sex. You can change your name or what pronouns people use. That doesn't mean your sex has changed. And when it comes to the pronoun police, nobody ought to be forced to use pronouns or the new names, if you will, in air quotes, of these individuals who identify as transgender. But let's listen to this clip. This is two moms that are weighing in on this from Colorado. They've also written an op-ed that I'll allude to towards the end of this clip. But let's listen to some of the dangers of this Colorado transgender bill.
This is personal for both of us. You know, both of our daughters were lured into this mindset that they'd been born in the wrong body in their public schools. And by the time we found out, we were bullied with that suicide myth. Would you rather have a living daughter or a dead son, or a living son or a dead daughter? And now this is giving the authority to our state to take our children away if we don't agree with these gender transitions. And so it's got huge ramifications for all parents, especially those in custody situations who are fighting with their ex-spouses to stop their children from being medicalized. But it opens the door for all parents to potentially have their children forcibly removed by the state if they're not willing to affirm their child's mental health distress. And as we learned with our daughters, that was a very damaging mindset. I mean, they fell into a deep, dark pit of confusion and depression that was caused by the secret gender transition. And so it's terrifying to think that parents like us, good, loving parents, could lose custody of their kids here in the state of Colorado for not going along with this mental health distress.
Well, that was, let's see here, that was Erin Lee, one of the mothers from Colorado, who's actually been personally affected by this subject, that is. And the bill is, I believe it's Colorado House Bill 1312, but the paywall just popped up, so I can't verify that. These paywalls, they get on my last nerves when you're trying to read a news story. And boom, they want you to pay $7 or something to read a news story. But I digress. It's a Colorado House Bill 1312. It's going on right now in the Colorado legislature. And that was Erin Lee, a Colorado mother, talking on Fox News about the legislation. But we've got to remember where this originates, because a lot of this transgender mania is couched as being caring and loving and compassionate. But in reality, it's everything but that. All right? It's everything but that. And here's why. It's not compassionate, loving, right or true to coddle someone in deception, to comfort someone, in air quotes, by lying to them or affirming their lie. And this is the primary falsehood when it comes to how we as a society handle people that are duped into this what has historically been described as a mental disorder. The left and the God haters and the science deniers, they've convinced us as a society that the right, true, and loving thing to do is to affirm someone in their falsehood, is to affirm someone in them being misled. When in reality, the right thing to do is to tell people the truth. And the right thing to do is to definitely not criminalize telling the truth. I'll never forget Laura Perry's story in His Image, which is our documentary, inhisimage.movie. Go and check it out. I'll never forget Laura Perry's story, and we've had Laura on the show and other programs on AFR, where she talks about Laura was confused. She bought into the lie that she could be a dude for a season of her life where she didn't know Jesus, she wasn't saved. And I'll never forget her saying that her mom refused to give in to this pronoun ideology, this pronoun way of operating. And her mother refused to call her by her boy name. Jake is what she went by. And Laura Perry talks about how that kept her tethered to reality, whether she liked it or not, whether Laura liked it or not. And she says she didn't at the time because she was lost. It kept her tethered to reality. And so, yes, there's the free speech and religious freedom angle, and those are two very valid angles that can stand on their own as far as arguments go, both legal and moral. But then there's the overarching problem about not caring for people. And this sometimes gets lost in all the legal arguments, right? First Amendment, parental rights. But the overarching message I want to send on this topic is that it's very uncompassionate. It's very cruel. It's very mean. It's very mean-spirited to affirm someone in their confusion, to tell them as they are being confused, as they are misled, to tell them that they're on the right track. To tell someone who is struggling with their core identity, they're struggling with how God designed them, male or female, to come to them and repeat the lies that you can be transgender, that you can change your name, that you can change your sex, and all this stuff's going to make you whole. That's a lie. Not just biblically, but scientifically as well and through biology. This is all a falsehood. It's all a lie. And to force people to go along with the lies is also very, very cruel to the people struggling.
For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. It's often repeated that 50% of marriages end in divorce. However, that statistic is not based on hard data, and it doesn't apply at all to committed Christians who marry. Over 70% of married, Bible-believing Christians who are active in their local churches have never divorced. Though the rate of divorce is still too high, it isn't nearly as high as the world would have you believe. Simply put, marriage is comprised of a husband and wife who place their faith in Christ Jesus for salvation individually, usually remain intact, and thrive.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner, or visit the podcast page at afr.net for more from Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
Have you wanted to take your family to Kentucky to visit the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter, but just never took the time? Don't put it off any longer. Let 2025 be the year you check that off the list. In fact, you can make it an even more memorable trip when you join AFA at the Ark October 30th and 31st. On Thursday, you'll get transportation for a tour of the Creation Museum, and Friday we'll take you for a tour of the Ark Encounter. But that's just the beginning. Expand your knowledge of creation with a special dinner presentation on Thursday by Answers in Genesis astronomer Dr. Danny Faulkner. Friday, Dr. Georgia Purdom, Answers in Genesis Vice President of Educational Content, will help you dig deeper into the Bible. And Friday evening, enjoy dinner and a panel discussion with Tony Vitagliano, Walker Wildmon, and Wesley Wildmon, Vice Presidents of American Family Association. Visit afa.net/events today and click on AFA at the Ark. afa.net/events and click on AFA at the Ark.
Well, the song says, please come to Boston. And if you are a baby boomer in particular, you remember that popular song from the 1970s? Well, we're going to Boston. We here at American Family Association and American Family Radio are going to take a tour of that great historic city and the whole surrounding area. And that's going to be in October. And we're about 3/4 of the way full with our tour there. And then, of course, we're going to Colonial Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown, as well as a tour of Washington, D.C. and George Washington's Mount Vernon. We're doing that in June and September. And so if you want information on any of our 2025 tours, go to wildmongroup.com, WILDMON group.com for all the information, and hopefully we'll see you in Boston.
At the Core podcasts are available at afr.net. Now, back to At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to the Core here on American Family Radio. Well, we try to have on guests from around the country talking about some of the latest news in the legislatures and in the culture and in the media, and bring you really what's going on the ground across the country. And one of our guests that we have on now is Michael Lunsford. He's not only founder, but also currently executive director of Citizens for a New Louisiana, and he's on with us now. Hey, Michael, welcome to the program.
Hey, thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Well, Michael, Louisiana is obviously not far down the road from us, and we like to keep an up-to-date on what's going on in Louisiana and other states as well, Texas and Florida. But before we do that, give us a little backgrounder on your organization, Citizens for a New Louisiana.
Well, so we started up, golly, it's been over 7 years ago. And the goal was, we found out that, there were some bureaucrats and politicians that wanted to spend a bunch of money they didn't need to spend, and they were lying to the public. And we said, well, we're going to find out if what they're saying is true. And when I found out that they were embellishing in an effort to raise taxes to build a bunch of buildings we didn't need, that's kind of what changed my life and got me involved in government transparency work. And it's amazing how much.
Yeah. Hey, Michael, let me have you call back. We're getting some audio interference on one of our ends. Could be on our end. But let me have our call screener get you back on the board, and we'll see if that fixes the issue.
Okay.
All right. Call back in. We'll get you back on the board. All right, so that's Michael Lunsford. We're going to try to get him back on the board and reset that connection. Something going on there, something going on squirrely. But there's some good news really going on in a lot of these states around the country, these conservative states, these conservative-leaning states. Louisiana is one of them. They got a great governor now. They had a Democrat there for several years, probably a term or two. And it's important that we I've talked about this before, but it's important, although Washington, of course, is important. What happens in Washington, D.C. is important. But one of the reasons we have on folks like Michael, and we're going to get him back on the board, to highlight what's going on in these different states is because we have to keep conservative momentum going on at the state level. Even though we focus on what's going on in Washington, we try to cover that. We want to see good things go over the finish line in Washington, D.C. It's also important to do the same type diligence and the same type tracking at the state level. And so that's why we have on folks from different states to bring us what's going on the ground. And so let's jump back to Michael. We got him back on the board. Hey, Michael, welcome back.
How's it going, guys? Is this a little better?
Yes, much better, 100% better. Hey, Michael, sorry to interrupt you earlier, but let's jump into some of these news items. We did hear, we could understand what you were saying earlier. It was just a little broken up. But AFA has been the target of the Southern Poverty Law Center before, and they've gone after all kinds of pro-family and Christian groups around the country over the years, and they've been broadly discredited, but they decided to target you and your organization all over your work on the ground in Louisiana. So give us a little update on that.
Well, so, yeah, we have some library cuckoos, I call them, over here, and their goal is to make sure that the transgender youth are properly, how shall we say, represented in the library collection, which means about half the materials in the library have to be focused on that issue. It's interesting, these groups also, in my area at least, all have the rainbow flag background for everything they do. So it's like no surprise what they stand for, right? That's their mission. Mm-hmm. And so we actually got sued by a librarian. We've gone to the Supreme Court. We're now back at the appellate court fighting back and forth with these people. And so that group called over to SLPC, Southern Poverty Law Center. Did I say that in the right order? I don't know. At any rate, so they wrote a nice article about how swell we are. And effectively, our work started out in this space. We were looking at taxpayer use of, or use of taxpayer dollars for different things. And so my thing is, why in the world would the taxpayers want to buy books promoting transgenderism to 3-year-olds? Why would we do that? Well, next thing you know, I'm Mr. Controversy, mm-hmm. and they want to shut us down, and they're just making all kinds of noise and doing all this stuff because that's their mission, is to further this lie, as you said earlier, and that's what it's become, right?
It looks like they've used the civil court to really go after you and your organization. Is that right?
Yeah, so they sued us for defamation, for effectively reporting what the librarian said at a meeting, which is, well, if you remove these books from the children's section, then you're a censor. And we all know how history frowns upon people who would censor books, right? Assuming, or alluding to the Nazis.
Even though they're the chief censors because we don't have the Bible in public schools because God can't be in schools.
Right. And it's not just that. You remember, these are the same people who went after Dr. Seuss a few years ago.
Yeah.
So I'd like to say they can't have it both ways, but they certainly try to have it both ways. What's scary is our mainstream media lets them have it both ways sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this whole talking point, we're talking to Michael Lunsford out of Louisiana, and the who is executive director and founder of Citizens for a New Louisiana. Michael, on this library discussion, one of the main talking points that you just alluded to that the left loves to use and the media is that, us right-wingers, we're being censors, we're burning books if we don't want porn in the library on the kids' shelf. But the reality, Michael, is not only is that just a complete and utter falsehood, but somebody's got to be the gatekeeper here. I mean, you literally cannot have a free-for-all in the libraries where anything and everything goes. That's not legal. There is actual laws on the books where it establishes standards for what's age appropriate and what's not, and what's legal content protected by the First Amendment and what's not. And so this whole idea that it just ought to be the Wild Wild West is just utterly false and untrue.
Well, no one goes along with that line of thinking, by the way. Now, unfortunately, our local police department would not engage. We were asking them to look into these materials because they violated several statutes, obscenity statute, which the library, by the way, is exempt from, but they're not exempt from materials harmful to minors. And we made the idea, I guess you could say, that these materials are harmful to minors and should be looked into. Anyway, the police department wasn't all that interested, but the legislature was. So last year, the year before, the legislature actually passed something that said, okay, everything in the material harmful to minors section that talks about pornography and all this stuff, we're going to move, or we're going to copy and paste that into what is appropriate in public libraries, into the library section of the law. So we got that done. Now it's illegal for it to be there, but it's still there. So we're picking through one at a time, finding these books and putting, letting the librarians know they're there. In many cases, the librarians are very open to removing these books. They find them and they say, oh no, how did this get here? And they take them out immediately. Mm-hmm. But the activists do public records requests to find out who's requesting these books be removed, and they're attacking them on social media, in person. They're mailing them things in the mail. I'm not going to get into that. But, nasty things in the mail they get.
Yeah.
Sometimes pornographic material. Sometimes it's fecal matter. Sometimes it's who knows what, but they're pressing really hard to make us shut up and go away. And anyone who supports the idea that we should protect children's innocence at least until they turn 18, we're been demonized by these people.
Yeah. What is you just talked a little bit about this, but I want to go in a little more detail. One of the problems that we faced in various states is enforcement mechanisms. And this is one area, one kind of loophole we're trying to address through other statutes. But you talked about the police department not being interested in it, which I find is interesting in and of itself, because that's their sole job is law enforcement, and they don't want to show up and look into something that's reportedly breaking the law. But is the Attorney General working with you guys? I don't know much about the Attorney General in Louisiana, but other than the legislature, is the AG or the governor, any other state agencies working with you on some type of enforcement mechanism here? Because this whole idea that we've got statutes on the books, but you can't enforce them, is just a big waste of time.
Well, and that's been the challenge with a lot of statutes, not just these, but a lot of statutes have no legal remedy. No, they're criminally illegal. But what happens if they break the law? There's nothing specifying what happens to them. Now, there are some generic areas, so certainly we could press for that. And there are exemptions to some of the exemptions. So we've been asking for that to be removed. We tried to do it last year to remove the obscenity exemption for public libraries, and that didn't make it through the legislature. They killed it in committee. So we're going to keep trying every year. Now, this year is a limited session. I don't think I have that particular one up this year, but we're going to bring it back again next year to remove that exemption so that if someone is putting out obscenity in the library, especially in the children's section, then they can be held accountable. And there is a criminal component to that, which involves jail time and fines and all kinds of other stuff.
Let me ask you this. What's the original reasoning behind excluding obscenity? Because that seems bizarre. And I know a lot of these laws go back to the 50s, 60s, and 70s, before my time. But why would you exclude obscenity from being prevented or being banned from libraries? That just doesn't. Obscenity is like a special form, like a especially bad form of pornography, correct?
Well, you would think that there are definitions for obscene material, and they're very graphic. If you read them, they'd make you blush. They make me blush. So I don't want to read them on the air, certainly.
Right.
But the exemptions don't just apply to public libraries. They apply to universities. They apply to schools. They apply to other areas where at one time responsible people did responsible things. Well, now they're like, well, it's not illegal. We're going to do it. We're going to press our agenda, this hard left transgender, this gay lifestyle agenda that they've been pushing on our kids. And so now we're having to respond to it and saying, well, we're not going to allow that to happen. We have to change the law so that we can prevent this. Now, what's been the biggest challenge to convincing, and the reason these things fail in committee is because these activists show up and they act holier than thou, and they act like meek and mild. And look, these people are crazy. There's no pornography in the library. If there were pornography in the library, we would be doing something about it. Don't listen to these people. And a lot of times that line works very well with the legislature, and they say, yeah, this is not a problem. This doesn't exist. These people are just making it up. We're just going to throw this out of the committee. Mm-hmm. And so that's been the challenge. Thankfully, we've been bringing these books with us to some of these meetings. And let me tell you, the last time I brought these books to the legislature, the sergeant in arms wouldn't let us show it to the people there. In fact,
come on.
The committee chairman said, remove these materials out of the room. We don't want to see this smut. It's like, well, this is in the children's section of the library. And so we would have these conversations about what was in the books, but we couldn't show them the books. It was the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah, that's bizarre. And those people lack courage and decency. If you can say, get this material out of the government building, the state legislature building, which for hearing purposes and for evidentiary purposes, get this out of here. We don't want to look at it, but the kids can look at it in the library. Completely doesn't make sense, and it's completely hypocritical. Michael, before we wrap up here, what are some things that you would like to see the legislature do? Maybe not this session, but in future sessions. I know you guys are the time's limited on the sessions, but what's some things you would like to do to maybe put some teeth on some of these laws that are on the books?
Well, one of the big challenges we have is we furnish the means by which we suffer, right? Which is a quote from one of the Federalist Papers, I believe. So the idea is that our tax dollars are being used to propagate this. And we're buying these books at the recommendation of who? The American Library Association. Well, every library, let's say every one of them, the large portion of libraries in the state of Louisiana are members of the American Library Association. We've even caught some of them when someone submits a book challenge saying, hey, this is nasty. They submit the name of the person and the challenge to the American Library Association to be added to a list. So I've done a records request for that same information, and it comes back redacted. They black out the name because I don't need to know the name. But they send it unredacted to the American Library Association. So we brought a bill last time that said the state of Louisiana will not use any taxpayer money for the American Library Association, and we will not reimburse travel expenses to librarians who go to their events, et cetera. And the legislature, they killed in committee is what they did because, there's no problem. That was the meeting I was telling you about where here are the books. Oh, we can't look at those books. They're too raunchy.
Right.
But that was the bill that got thrown out of committee. So we're going to be bringing it back, I think, next session, which is an open session. This one's limited fiscal session. So we'll be bringing it back and see how it goes. But the big challenge is if you're writing the check to the organization that's doing this to our kids, to me, that's the big problem.
Yeah.
You
no
can lock
doubt.
people up all day. You can threaten jail time, but the government writing checks to an organization to do this work is my big challenge.
Yeah, I agree. And that's where you're going to get broad consensus. I mean, if you were to run surveys or polls on this, you're going to get, 70, 80, 90% of people who agree with you that our tax dollars, and in your case, Louisiana tax dollars, shouldn't go towards that garbage. Hey, Michael, thanks so much for coming on. Give our folks your website real quick.
Yes, sir. It's real simple. It's newlouisiana.org. We've got great information there about some of our other work, but it's mostly about taxpayer transparency. Where is your money going? And if it's going to pay for smut in the children's section, that's a problem.
Absolutely. Hey, Michael, thanks for coming on, brother. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Talk to you soon. Bye.
All right. Well, we got to have folks like Michael and you do this good work of exposing the darkness and bringing forth reasonable, plausible, viable alternatives to a lot of this garbage in our culture. And that's what Michael and his organization are doing in Louisiana. And this fight goes back to my grandfather in the early days of the ministry, fighting obscene and pornographic material in our libraries. We'll be back in a few.
Some would say truth is relative, and to the world, that's right. What the world considers to be truth fluctuates depending on the narrative they're trying to promote. Of course, we know truth is found in Scripture, and it never changes. The documentary, The God Who Speaks, proves the Bible's reliability as the source of real truth and reinforces our belief in it as our firm foundation. Watch it anytime at stream.afa.net. That's stream.afa.net.
The American Family Association's mission is to inform, equip, and activate individuals to strengthen the moral foundations of our culture. We also support the church. Our goal is to be a leading organization in biblical worldview training for cultural transformation. We believe that our ministry, as well as everything in the heavens and on earth, belongs to God, and our role is that of a trusted manager.
Thank you for standing with the American Family Association.
Together, you and I have much to celebrate. Last year, because of your caring help, Preborn rescued over 67,000 babies from abortion. Hi, I'm Dan Steiner, president of Preborn, and I want to thank you for your partnership. Think about what you did. 67,000 little babies are taking their first breath now because of your caring help. Your $28 sponsored one ultrasound that was given to one woman as she was deciding about the future of her baby. Once she saw her precious baby for the first time and heard their sweet baby's heartbeat, the chance of that child living doubled. And Preborn's mission is not only to rescue babies' lives, but also to lead women to Jesus Christ. Last year, we saw 8,900 women receive Christ as Savior. Your help is crucial to continue our life-saving work.
Your caring tax-deductible gift saves lives. To learn more or donate, visit preborn.com/AFR or dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby.
Hey friends, it's Jessica Peck, Dr. Nurse Mama, as your 1-minute parenting coach. Have you heard the latest TikTok teen craze on bed rotting? This is a toxic self-care trend that showcases young people, burrito wrapped in their covers, phone in hand, to endlessly scroll with snacks piled high. Now, it's okay to be a vegetable every once in a while, but bed rotting is not a healthy habit for coping. Gorging your eyes on screens disrupts your mind-body balance. It can even be a sign of real anxiety or depression. Parents, we need to model healthy coping behaviors for stress management, like taking a walk, talking to a friend, listening to music, reading, praying, or going to church. Ask your teens about this trend, and I'll see you on the Dr. Nurse Mama radio show right here on American Family Radio.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Walker Wildmon.
Welcome back to the last segment of today's program here on American Family Radio. I want to remind you of a couple ways to keep up with the program. The first one is we do live stream the video of the show on At the Core's Facebook page and on AFR's Facebook and X and other handles, social media handles. That's the video. We also have the video up on stream.afa.net each day, stream.afa.net, live streaming with the archives there as well. We would also appreciate it for any of you that subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. We would appreciate you subscribing to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Introducing our next guest, Mark Ludwig is with us. He's founder of Americans for Equal Shared Parenting, and Mark is with us now. Hey, Mark, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, we've got you've got some legislation going on in the state of Missouri that I do want to spend most of our time on. But before we do that, I looked up, of course, this is the first time you and I have talked. I know you work with my colleague, Jamison Taylor, often, but I looked up a little bit about your organization at prepping for the interview, and I was like, what's up with this name, Equal Shared Parenting? It sounds kind of bizarre, if you will, almost. But when I started looking into your organization and the work that you're doing, and talk a little bit about that, it's pretty interesting and important, the work that you're doing when it comes to kids having access to both parents. So give us a little background of there.
Yeah, basically it's for children of divorce or separation that in the past have been basically relegated as an every other weekend visitor with one of their parents. And I believe that's directly against God's design. God designed opposites to attract for a reason. Each has a strength and each has a weakness. Traditionally, one parent tends to be more of the nurturer, one tends to be more of the disciplinarian. And unfortunately, the American family court system has been designed in such a way as to create an adversarial relationship where there's a winner take all, and one parent becomes the custodial parent, and one is basically relegated to an every other weekend visitor, which is very unhealthy for a child, especially when you realize that child at some point is going to become a teenager and need discipline. And traditionally, it's the father that gets relegated to the every other weekend visitor. So it's a little hard for a child when they're a teenager to respect that disciplinary role when they've been basically trained their entire life. They're just a visitor. They're basically like an aunt or an uncle. I don't have to pay attention to them.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, and I think there's a lot of truth there. And unfortunately, most people have seen either firsthand or otherwise divorce, unfortunately, and it's a tragedy. The fact that divorce takes place in and of itself is a tragedy. But to your point, the kids being kind of split and taken away from one parent or the other for 80, 90% of the time is very sad. And especially one thing you guys also focus on is that the court, there's usually not a compelling reason for this time difference, this 80, 20, 70, 30 breakdown. It's usually has nothing to do with whether one of the parents are able or willing or suitable. It's just kind of this coin flip, if you will, on who gets the most time with the children, right?
Exactly. And that's it. If a parent is fit, willing, and able enough to be a parent 4 overnights a month, there's no reason why they shouldn't be a parent. Now, if there's abuse or something like that's a totally different story.
Right.
And I don't fight for those. I fight for the fit, willing, and able. But the challenge is, and you see this across the country, when you look at the fatherlessness, and I'll fight just as hard for a mother as a father because I'm fighting for the child, but statistically, it's the father that 83% of the cases gets relegated to the visitor. But when you look at incarceration rates, high school dropout rates, teen pregnancy rates, teen suicide, behavioral problems, drug problems, about 80% of every one of those, the one common ingredient, they grew up without a dad. Now, you can't do anything about the dads that walk away, but you don't penalize the children of the dads who have fathers who want to be a part of that.
That's a good point. That's some very important work you're doing there. Another thing I want to talk about, Mark, is this legislation in Missouri dealing with basically a fatherhood task force. This would be first in the country, if I'm not mistaken. But give us a little background on that.
Yeah, this is Representative Jamie Ray Gregg, who is just a phenomenal warrior and has a passion for fathers and the father-child relationship down from the Springfield, Missouri area. And he and I got together at John Ashcroft's house, I guess this was about a year ago, and he started telling me about what he wanted to do, and it got me so excited. But he has been a warrior for this. But as you're aware, there's been a war on families, and the easiest way to divide the family is to get the father out of the house and get the mother or the child dependent upon the government. And you can see this every TV show you look at. When I was growing up, the father was the person you looked up to in the family. When I growing up watching Leave It to Beaver and the Brady Bunch, and nowadays every TV show you look at, the father is the butt of the joke. He's the buffoon. He's the idiot. He's the one that everybody makes fun of. And if you go to any church in the country, you'll find a group for single mothers. If you go to any state in the country, you'll find agencies to help single mothers. But where are the programs for fathers who want to be a father? But unfortunately, when half of the marriages end in divorce and half of the pregnancies are out of wedlock nowadays, where do these people go to that don't have a role model, that don't know what is it like to be a healthy father? I didn't have an example as a father. I don't know what to do. So Jamie set up a phenomenal bill, HB 927, that's going along very well, by the way, in Missouri, to set up what's called the Fathership Project. And what this is going to do is set up a special fathership task force within the state of Missouri to look at ways to empower and enable fathers and to help build healthy relationships with both married and unmarried fathers, and to help guide fathers who don't have that role model.
Yeah, this if you can get this bill, Lord willing, over the finish line, this is a really big deal, Mark, because there's the immediate benefit of kids simply having their dads, having good dads in the home. But then there's the economic side of this and the crime statistics side of this. Talk about a little more about how much you could improve a society, or in this case, a state, if you increase or reduce the number of MIA dads, if you reduce the number of dads that are not present caring for their children.
Oh, absolutely. I actually drive for Uber to make a living, and I'm in St. Louis. And you go to North St. Louis in both the city and in the county, but especially in the North City, you'll see a city that it doesn't even look like a normal city in America anymore. It looks like a third world country. And as you drive around, my passengers even tell me, every once in a while we get in discussions and I'll ask them, what happened? This used to be such a good area. And almost every single time people will say the dads aren't in the home anymore. And that's the father traditionally is the disciplinarian. And, especially for children of divorce, they're confused because mom and dad aren't together. But then, especially if the dad is relegated to an every other weekend, they kind of feel like a visitor. So it's not that they necessarily lose interest, but for a father who didn't have a good role model, they're like, I have to jump through hoops and hurdles just to try and get a few hours with my child. Why even try anymore? And so a lot of the fathers, especially in the city, they give up, not because they don't love their child. There were just too many hurdles and they don't have a good example. And imagine then a child growing up that, they want mom and dad both, even if a father is incarcerated, in the child's mind, that's still their hero. That's dad. They want to see dad when they get a chance to visit with them. And so for a child to say, you know what, mom and dad aren't together, I'm confused about that, but I'm also confused. Why do I not get to see one parent too often? And that's when they strive for that connection. And sadly, the connection usually comes in the form of gangs, or because what happens is they feel like they're a part of something. And when the dad isn't around, or the mother too, but traditionally the dad, they just want to feel a part. They want to feel like they're somebody. And those gangs fill that role. And sadly, that's what happens when you drive around, Detroit or Baltimore or St. Louis. I don't think it's a racial thing. I think it's a father thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And the data here is overwhelming. There's the moral argument, which in and of itself, as I mentioned earlier in the program with a separate topic, the moral and biblical argument here, it stands on its own. It doesn't need supporting evidence, if you will. But the data, the social data is there. I mean, it's there when the family breaks down, whether it's the dad or the mom, divorce, whatever the situation is, when the family breaks down and the kids are left in chaos and confusion, the social, economic, and otherwise consequences are just so damaging. I mean, the stats are so overwhelming that when the house breaks down, when the family breaks down, all of society suffers. I do love how, looking at this legislation, just reading directly from it, it talks about this Missouri Fathership Project having two. There's a lot going on here, but there's two main things that they're tasked at doing. And that is, number one, promote fathership by helping fathers achieve greater self-esteem, better awareness for their responsibilities to their families and community. And number two, empower fathers to become successful in fathership by building life skills and through family reunification, education and career training, employment support, and child support compliance. Mark, I could see this spreading across the country, because every person that has some semblance of awareness understands that this fatherless epidemic, if we can start to patch this up, that we can see a lot of improvements across the board.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm already getting calls. I already have 8 legislators from around the country that have called me asking me to help them work on this next year in Indiana, Alabama, Pennsylvania, Kentucky. We've got a lot of states that are looking at this. And it's looking great, by the way. Jamie's done a phenomenal job. We've passed the House in Missouri, 135-11, so overwhelming support. It's now moved on to the Senate. Ironically, our handler on the Senate side is our is the chair of the Children and Families Committee, where it's been assigned to. Jill Carter. She's been a great warrior for the pro-life movement, for the family movement. And so she's very passionate about this. And so this will be having a hearing. I don't think this week, but I think next Tuesday, we're going to be having a hearing in the state of Missouri on this. And as you know, you don't really get too excited, but I do believe we're going to pass this in Missouri overwhelmingly this year. And I know our governor, Mike Kehoe, will sign it. So this will be a great template for the rest of the country.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Mark, once again, we've been talking to Mark Ludwig. Mark, as soon as you get this thing over the finish line, Lord willing, give us a buzz. We want to have you back on the program to talk about it once it's law and how we can get this in states around the country. You can go ahead and add Mississippi to your wish list. We've got a lot of connections here. We can at least, at a minimum, get it introduced next session and probably get it over the finish line. But we appreciate your work here. This is very, very important work. It's fundamental. It doesn't get a lot of attention, but we got to have this type of work on the ground. So appreciate your work, Mark. Tell our folks how they can check out your website.
Well, I've got on the personal side, I do a lot of training teaching people how to get active in legislation. So it's stlmarkludwig.com. So STL for St. Louis, stlmarkludwig.com. And I'm very active on Facebook. If you go to Mark Ludwig, and there'll be a picture of me and my son with a blue banner that says children need both parents.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Hey, Mark, thanks so much for coming on the program.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. That's Mark Ludwig. The URL is stlmarkludwig, LUDWIG.com. We'll link to that on the show notes over at afr.net. This, folks, these are the heroes of our day. I mean, they are. These are the heroes of our day. And these topics don't get as much attention kind of out there in the mainstream, if you will. But when you look at the numbers, when you look at just the data on fatherlessness, out of wedlock births, young men, young women growing up without a father, some growing up without a mother, it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. And the damage that's being done, the generations that are being harmed by this, it's so sad. I mean, this is one of the saddest things that I see in my work every day. I mean, there's the travesty of abortion, and that's horrific. We cover that here on the program. And the second worst thing that I see is children that are being victimized. Children that are being victimized. I mean, there's no other way to put it. And whether it's through this radical transgender homosexuality, radical sexual deviancy agenda that's just going after children day in and day out, or the breakdown of the family, the carnage is real. The carnage is real, and you don't have to look far to see the carnage. You look at America's crime rates. You look at the rates of children that are growing up with severe anxiety and depression. The number of kids that are on all kind of pharmaceuticals to try to patch the pain. You look at our economics, the education statistics, crime statistics. I mean, the vast majority of the problems that we're facing as a society is because we don't have mom and dad in the home. I mean, that's what it boils down to. The breakdown of the family as God designed it. We'll see you next time.